Supper with Stub, supper with Stub, mixing up drinks and making grub, pairing beer and wine with the dishes we love. Come on in and see the spell of Supper with Stub.
Hello friends, welcome to Supper with Stub. You know what we do here? We drink and we cook things. Welcome to the first ever very special episode of Supper with Stub, where we will be having breakfast for dinner. That's right, today we'll be making gravy biscuits, homemade biscuits I might add, along with some bacon and scrambled eggs. Well, as always, we start the show with the cocktail, and today is no different. Today I'll be making what I like to call the Blue Ridge Bellini. It's a cocktail I developed for my good friends down at Daytime Blue Ridge in Roanoke, Virginia. So you see I've just wet the rim of a champagne flute, and then I've dipped it in mint sugar. Now, mint sugar is simply 5 to 6 mint leaves ground together in a little spice grinder with about a quarter cup of sugar. This will hold in the fridge for a week or so pretty well. That's why we don't make a whole lot of it. All right, to our champagne flute, we are going to add 1 ounce of our peach simple syrup. Now, peach simple syrup is simply 1 cup of water, 1 cup of sugar minus 9 teaspoons, and 3 pureed peaches. Puree those with the water, boil and make as you normally would, and then strain through a sieve. Now, why do we pull our sugar out of there? Because there's about 3 teaspoons of sugar in each peach, and we don't want this to be overly sweet. All right, to this I'm gonna add 1/2 ounce of bourbon, hence the Blue Ridge, and then because it's breakfast, we're gonna go ahead and top this thing off with some bubbly wine, and today we're using the Zonin Prosecco. You can use your favorite Prosecco, bubbly wine, champagne, whatever you would like in here. Personally, I get past 40, 50 bucks and I'm not mixing my champagne with anything other than my palate. Oh boy, this is gonna be a big pop here. Anyway, this Zonin Prosecco you can get for, I don't know, $14 to $16, usually at a grocery. Now, when you pour this, pour slowly. The sugar and booze in here is gonna make this want to bubble a little more than normal. And look at that, right over the edge, just as I did on Daytime Blue Ridge before when I've made this cocktail. Now, what you get in here, you get a little bite from the bourbon, but you definitely get the sweetness from the syrup, the peach syrup in there, and of course the effervescence of the sparkling wine. Even through that, it tastes lovely. So we're gonna go ahead and top this off so we can sip on this while we are making the rest of today's meal. All right, friends, we've assembled all of the makings for our biscuits here in front of us. Now, you might ask yourself, Stub, why would I go with making my own biscuits over the canned or the frozen biscuits I can buy at the store? Those are easy to do. Well, I'll tell you what, these are actually easy to do. You can impress your friends and family with your kitchen prowess, and they are delicious. And why not try something new? Those of you who know me know, I've always said I will try anything twice, and I've been making biscuits for years, although I don't usually do it either. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna add all of our dry ingredients to a bowl, and we're going to mix these together. Now, I'm using my hands here, as you see. If you have a food processor or stand mixer, you can use that for this process and the next process, which is then going to be incorporating, cutting in our butter. Now, if you let your butter soften a little bit, this will be an easier step, but we're really just cutting this in, and it's easier to do if you squeeze it with your hands here. And you want something that's gonna end up looking like a rough meal, like a cornmeal. So this is gonna get a little crumbly as we incorporate the butter in here. All right, there we go. We've incorporated our butter pretty well. You see this is sort of crumbly. It's not 100% perfect, but we are going to go with it. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add our buttermilk. I've got, as the recipe says, about 1.25 cups. Now, this is where you really have to be careful with your biscuits. This is really, honestly, about one of the more important parts. You want to mix this in. You can use a spoon or a spatula if you'd like to do this. I really enjoy doing it with my hands. Once again, we're going to do this gently. We want this to mix well. And I'm gonna say a couple of times while we're making our biscuits, the key is to not over mix or overwork our dough. That said, if you do it with your hands, it's really, really hard to overwork this dough. So don't be afraid of that. All right, friends, you see we have this pretty well incorporated. You can see even on my hands, this is a little bit sticky. Now we're gonna set this aside, You're gonna need some flour for this part as well. This is not exactly the least messy thing you'll ever do in your life, but like I said, it's rewarding and fine. So you wanna go ahead and grease your pan here. You can do this right on the counter if you have butcher block, or even if you don't mind the cleaning. So we're gonna take our ball, and you see it's a little wet and sticky here. And now we're gonna start working this out and kneading it out. So let's get a little flour on each side. Now, once again, you're gonna be tempted to wanna use a rolling pin for this. Do not do it. You will indeed overwork your dough. Now, if you didn't incorporate your dough in the last step as well, this is gonna look a little crumbly on top. If you do that and make your biscuits, they're gonna end up coming out more like scones than biscuits. They'll taste delicious. They'll just look more like well, those Cheddar Bay biscuits we get at one of our favorite chain casual dining places. So you see I'm kind of just pressing this out gently here. Oh, this is fun too. I love the feeling of dough in my fingers. It's fun, it's squishy, it talks back to you. It reminds me of other pleasurable things to grab, you know, like playing Play-Doh when you're a kid, or making mud pies when you were a kid. That's just a fun experience that takes me back to things I absolutely love. So once again, we've got this to about a uniform 1/2 to 3/4 inch rectangle here. Now we're gonna cut our biscuits. Now, if you have a biscuit cutter, use that. If not, look, I'm using a pint glass here. This is about the size of biscuits I want. I'm gonna go ahead and dip this a little bit in flour. So we're gonna take, and all we wanna do is press directly down. Whether biscuit cutter or glass, you don't wanna turn. What you will do at that point is close off the sides of the biscuits, and they will not rise near as well. So I've made this a little more thick than I normally would, and this is also for instructional purposes here. So we're gonna cut as many biscuits as we can out of this first batch here. And then we're gonna take and place those on our baking sheet. When we're done, we're gonna go ahead and just rework this dough and do the same thing with the rectangle, and then we will cut more biscuits out of this. So this will normally make 10 to 12 biscuits, depending on how thickly you cut them. Now, the same as on your biscuit packs when you use the biscuit dough in the can from the store. If you want these to rise a little fluffier, put them side by side. If you want them to be, browned around the edges, go ahead and separate them as I've done here. That's a little too much for one biscuit. So you can see here we've gotten 6, 7, we got 8 biscuits out of here. Yeah, that's about right. I'm okay with that. This little bit of dough here. I'll tell you what, we'll just we'll ball this guy up and just throw it on the pan and have a nice little something to test our gravy with later. All right, you see what a great mess we've made, but there's our pan of biscuits. We're gonna go over to our oven, which once again is preheated to 450 degrees, and pop these in the middle rack here. And we're going to cook these for about 12 to 17 minutes. Start checking them around 12. Oven temperatures vary, we all know this. All right, friends, while our biscuits are cooking, we can finish up, or mostly finish up, the rest of this meal. You can see I've been frying bacon here. I'm not showing you how to fry bacon. If you like it crisp, fry it crispy. If you like it a little less done, fry it less done. The important thing here is we have the bacon grease in here, the renderings that we can use to get to the main course, or the main attraction as far as a thing, and that is our homemade gravy. Now, I grew up in the South eating gravy and biscuits all the time. When my cousin, my brother, and I would spend the weekends with my grandparents, this was always the requested breakfast every Saturday and or Sunday morning. And when you think the South, you think sausage gravy. Me personally, it usually is a little bit salty. If you get more into some other recipes, it gets a little too sagey for me. So I love using the bacon grease as the base for my roux for my gravy, and it's this simple. We have our however many tablespoons of bacon grease this is in here. To that, we're gonna add just some pepper, no salt, because keep in mind, we've got plenty of salt from the bacon in there. Now, what I am gonna add is about 2 tablespoons of butter. This is just gonna give us a little creaminess, and man, I really love the flavor on this, so basically that's why I'm doing it. So I've turned this all the way down, and I'm actually turning this off, because what I don't wanna do is burn my butter, as I sort of am a little bit right now. But we're gonna take care of that by turning off the heat, just letting this just get to melting. And then we're gonna start adding a little at a time our flour. So you have about equal parts grease or butter as you do flour. Don't add it all at the same time. You want to see how it's incorporating. So you see as we do this in the hot pan, We want to stir this constantly to make a really, really smooth roux as we go here. So there we go. Now it's not burning. We've cooled it off just enough. So once again, we're just adding a little flour at a time to get a nice smooth roux. Stirring constantly at this point. Now this has cooled off a bit, so keep in mind this should be on super low right now while you're incorporating your flour. If you have it too high, you will burn your flour. It'll taste like, your gravy will taste like burned flour, and you don't really want that. All right, so we're gonna keep stirring this. I'm gonna leave this about where it is. Can you see this thickness from the overhead shot, about where we are with that right there? We're gonna let this cook off just a little here while we're constantly stirring. So it's now time to add the last ingredient, which is milk. Now, a lot of people will add this to the skillet, incorporate it and stir it constantly. What I like to do, and a lot of times, depending on what else I'm making for breakfast, I'll actually put this in a saucepan, but what it really does, especially for people who haven't made gravy a lot, is it allows you to add your milk and incorporate it and stir it vigorously to get all of the roux incorporated well. All right, so we've put our roux in a saucepan here. We've turned the heat on. We're gonna turn this on about a medium low or so, and then we're gonna add our milk. Okay, and we're gonna add this very slowly. And that's about what I told you to add. Once again, always add less than more during this process, just like with the flour. Now we're gonna take a whisk or a rubber spatula or our spoon and just stir this in well so the roux incorporates with the milk. All right, so our gravy has just come to a boil. We're now going to make sure we've stirred it. We've been stirring this constantly, or mostly constantly here. We're gonna go ahead and give it one nice stir, put it down on low, and then check back on it every couple of minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and do our next component to our meal here, which is scrambled eggs. You can see I have 6 eggs here. I don't really need to show you how to scramble eggs, do I? We're gonna put a little bit of crushed fresh black pepper in there. I like to add a little dash. This is seasoning salt. Once again, my favorite brand. Still haven't returned my emails. Come on, people. And then to kick my eggs up, I like to put some shredded cheddar cheese in there. I mostly like to do that because the rib loves cheesy eggs. Now, the key to eggs, even if you use a non-stick skillet, you want to cook low and slow. Most of us want to cook our eggs too quickly. I'm not going to show you how to scramble eggs, but I am going to throw 2 tablespoons of butter into the pan before we make these. All right, friends, our timer's gone off on our biscuits. Let's pull these things out and see what they look like. Oh my. Wow, let's bring these over here and throw them right under. That's right out of the oven. Bacon, let's plate this delicious meal because we are about done with our cocktail. All right, so how do we plate this meal? Well, we're gonna take one of our biscuits here, and you can see, you can probably just pull this thing open. We're gonna go and slice it just to make sure it looks pretty there. See how thick our gravy is? If you like it a little thinner, add a little milk and make sure you stir it in. But we're gonna start with this, little gravy over top each biscuit half. I usually personally pinch these up myself, but that's just me because that's how we did it as kids. You can add us some eggs there. Now these eggs, once again, they look like they're not fluffy. I promise they are. We just put a lot of cheese in there to go deliciously with them. Now, this is not a meal that's gonna win you any favors with your trainer or nutritionist because quite honestly, there's nothing really super healthy about this meal at all, other than the immense love that went into making it. We're gonna throw a couple of slices of bacon on there, and then voila. Beautiful plate, gravy, biscuits, cheesy eggs, and of course, bacon. Now you may be asking yourself, Stub, what do we pair with this breakfast for dinner or breakfast for brunch meal? Well, we're gonna start with our wine. Anyone want to take a guess on what it is? Yeah, we already opened that bottle of Prosecco. Let's go ahead and do that. What I've found with this meal over the years is the creaminess, especially of the gravy and the biscuits themselves, added with the creaminess of the eggs. You need something that's gonna cut it. So you need something with a little bit of acid. You need something, the effervescence of the bubbles, make it absolutely perfect pairing for the gravy and biscuits. It also pairs well with the saltiness of the bacon. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and cut in here and see how well we've done. As expected, that yeah, the acid and the bubbles on the Prosecco really cut through the creaminess there. You know, we always feature a beer, and it feels like I've been featuring IPAs a lot on Supper with Stub. Well, number one, I love IPAs. Number two, the same thing goes for beer that goes for wine. You want something that's crisp, you want something that's gonna cut through the creaminess of this meal. Otherwise, enter, and admittedly, this is my everyday go-to, crack a couple of beers with the guys, Lagunitas IPA. This is just their standard flagship IPA. It's crisp, it's light, it's got the little hop character that's gonna cut through and sort of act like the acid does from the wine. Let's see how this goes. We're doing eggs and biscuits here together. All right, that's a pretty nice pairing, actually, if you're prone to having a beer with breakfast. Like my friends JB and the Moonshine Band, they have a song called Beer for Breakfast. Down here in Texas, it's Beer for Breakfast. I think it's a couple years old, but that still holds. Fun song, and who doesn't want a beer for breakfast every now and again? Now, maybe more appropriate with brunch. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, I like the cocktail and the Prosecco by itself as a better pairing with this meal, but if you're not prone to the bubbly wine, and you want to have a beer because you're having a later brunch, by all means, a nice hoppy IPA will fit the bill. All right, well, there we have it, friends. We have gravy, homemade biscuits, easy peasy. I know these episodes are shorter. This entire meal took me about 45 minutes to make, maybe 50. But that includes making your own biscuits. Obviously, if you need more biscuits for a family, you know, double the recipe or do a couple batches at a time. That way it's easier to work the dough. But the gravy, the biscuits, the cheesy eggs, and the bacon. Remember, the bacon grease is the key for a perfect roux and not having an overly salty gravy. All right, well, thanks for joining me for Supper with Stub. Till next time, stop coveting, start drinking. And remember, there's always a seat at the table for you for Supper with Stub. Cheers, friends.